Tip that God gave us. I know time is fleeting, but the word needs to be spoken this morning. I'll try to contain it as much as possible, but still, the thing needs to be spoken this morning. Um, this morning, it's as I mentioned earlier. Um, by the way, Sister Persis is not here. Is she okay? She's okay. Great. I will start with something that transformed my life on 9/11. Um, I'll have to go a little bit back. In the month of April of 2001, I was having a very good job, um, and suddenly our whole department was canned because of what Motorola was going through, a downturn. And if you are not in tune with what is happening around, things can fall apart very fast. Motorola was the inventor of the cell phones, but it ended up now they hardly make, other than some handsets, nothing is happening with Motorola. Motorola was bought out by other company also. So that was the initial time of the downturn of Motorola. The whole department was canned, and then so we were, honestly, I was in a flunk, um, in the sense that I was thinking that I was climbing up the ladder doing all these things, and suddenly you see you're out of job. And then in our community, if you're out of job, you're useless. Um, that is what people think you are. But I praise God that I lost that job. And today, looking 20 years later. But anyway, that story. And in May, Pastor Jacob Matthew came to our home, and he talked about missions, and he said that, "Hey, you need to come to India." And I said, "Okay, I'll come to India." Um, and this is, you're desperate and doing what do you need to do. I did not know I was active with the young people and all those things. And so he said, "There's an organization." I had never heard of ICPF before. He came in and told me. He said, "Come to India, and you can be part of it." And then in that same month, Pastor Saji Lucas, who does Mission India, he also came in and told me, "Oh, you should join this organization, and so you come to Nagpur as well." So I said, "Okay." So I made this plan to go, but my dad was so mad that I would make this choice. My mom was so mad, and she's sitting here. I can put that right on her too. They were so mad, and think about this. They were very active in telling everybody to do things of the Lord and all those things, and they were very active. And for them, that things for the Lord means that you support from the sideline and not go in. And it is probably, hopefully it was love for me and my family, but it is more than that, because it is very hard to get hard. നമ്മളെല്ലാം പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കും, നമ്മളെല്ലാം കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങളെ എക്സൈറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് ഇവിടെ എല്ലാം നിന്ന് ഈ വാക്യങ്ങളെല്ലാം പറയുമ്പോൾ നമ്മളെല്ലാം കൈകൊട്ടും, നമ്മൾ ഭയങ്കര സന്തോഷമാണ്. പക്ഷേ ഇന്ന് അവരൊന്ന് സൂചിയുടെ വേലയ്ക്ക് പോകുമെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞേ, അന്നേരം നമ്മുടെ കാര്യം മനസ്സിലാവും. So anyway, so this happened, and then in August, so I planned for August 3rd week to go to India, and so I planned for 1 month. And so when that happened, my daughter told me, Sarah told me, her birthday is on September 18th. So I booked the ticket to come back on September 17th of 2001 to come back home, and I said, "I will not miss your birthday. I will be back." And so August 9 to 12, there was a convention in our church. It was with George C. Kurwala. And if you do not know, if you know New India, what is it? New Theological Seminary, right? NTC, in New Theological College in Dehradun. It is one of the biggest Bible schools in India. And he was the he's the founder principal of it. And he came in and shared his testimony, and wonderful. I never forget the messages that he spoke. 3 days he spoke on the prodigal son. 3 days on the prodigal son. First day about the father, first day about the son, second day about the father, third day about the second son. And then on the last night, so he didn't have a meeting, so we extended the meeting. And so I'm the translator. standing there. I've been the official translator. So that evening, Sunday evening, this guy started to speak on his testimony. I spoke for her, and I went in and visited this yesterday night, and it is still on YouTube. And I was there for maybe 6 or 7 minutes translating. I could not stand, started crying, and I sat down. And then this guy had to he said that I will do it, you just sit down. And he did it both in Malayalam and English. And because he was telling my story. Right after this meeting, my dad goes, that message changed my life. My dad and mom, I don't know whether mom, my dad goes to him and said, Pastor, oru karyam cheyanam, ende monodu parayanam, naatti poru. He went in and told him, don't tell him not to. And he said that, you're telling me to tell your son not to go? And I'm here to encourage people to go for missions? He said, I will not do it. My pastor was also disagreeing with me because my parents are not agreeing, you should not go. Anyway, long story short, my dad said, Nee ponangi poko, njan ninne konduvidathilla airport. And this is all tied down to my message, okay? And I will not take you to the airport. And for me, Binu is at work, and she cannot come early to come to work, come home and take care of the kids. And dad goes to work at certain time. My flight is at 7 o'clock in the evening. So my dad has to drop me. Somebody has to drop me at the airport. We live 30, 35 miles away. So now my prayer is, and he will not talk to me either. And once he gets angry, man, he doesn't even talk. And he said, Ninakku venange poko. I don't care. Engane venelum poko. Alle ninne bharya konduvidu. And my prayer is, Lord, if it is this you, and this is the honest truth, my prayer is, if this is you, I want my dad to drop me. Arrogance noikona ende. My dad to drop me. So Binu said that I will drop you. But lo and behold, I think something happened and she could not come on time. Guess who dropped me at the airport? My dad did. And he did not talk to me. He just told me, put the stuff in the car. He did not talk to me all the way to the airport. And he didn't even give me a hug before he left. And I'm going for a month. And he said, take your stuff out. I went. But I was happy that at least my dad dropped me at the airport. So I go to India. I go to Nagpur. I come to Kerala. I'm interested now in ICPF and all those. And my flight back is on the 17th. So I booked the ticket that I will be back in I think 1690 is my flight from Kerala to come to Mumbai and from Mumbai to here. 9/11 happens. Sitting in the room with Binu's dad and mom, and her dad comes in. I think it's late in the night. And we see this plane coming in and India, America, he just told. And I said, my heart just dropped. Because once that happened, the other story immediately came is the flights, everything is moved to, is grounded and moved to all these different places. And there is nothing going to fly into the US. Now, the second thing is haunting me. You promise your kid something, and it doesn't happen, what is going to be in that kid's heart? Just like Ansu said yesterday, right? It's a small thing for the parents to go back to Abu Dhabi, but that hurt that kid for a long time. The same thing that can happen to kids. You promise something and it doesn't happen, it is going to be hard. Am I thinking, now what? Anyway, I hope she understands. But then I made a promise. So I started praying and I said that there is no flights going in. And suddenly they said that we are going to Afghanistan. They said that, we are not going to Ethiopia. And I'm just saying, Afghanistan means near India. So now if they attack, so now this landscape is also going to be affected. How am I going to come back? God taught me so many lessons in those days, and that is why I'm bringing this, because adversities can create opportunities, and commitments can be made in those times. So somehow I took this step. My father-in-law dropped me to the airport, and they said that, okay, we can fly you to, so I at some flight I got that I could come to Mumbai. And I said, at least I'll go to Mumbai and see what happens now, because the flights are not going. So I come to Mumbai and I stay there. My flight is booked on Air France coming to here. So I come to the airport. This is on the 15th, I believe. 15th night, I am at the airport in Mumbai. I said, I want you, I'm an American citizen, I want you to fly me at least to Europe. I don't want to be stuck in here, because if the fighting happens, Americans are the ones that they're going to attack. At least I'm in Europe, I'm safe. Somehow fly me to Europe. So there is a flight that has landed in India, and they have to somehow, there is nobody, no flights that is going anywhere else, so nobody is traveling. So I went to the counter and they said, no, we don't have it. And then there is a flight that is going to Europe, but there is no passenger, so we don't know whether they are going to go. So there is this person that is standing at the counter. I didn't know she was the air hostess as well. So she's there, and then she said that, you know what, let me see if I can get you to Europe, get you to Paris. Okay. So she put me on that flight to Paris. And I see in the plane, honestly, the plane in the main section is empty. I think I'm the only one that is out there. I'm scared. There is an empty flight that is going all the way to Europe. I come to France, and this air hostess, I saw her going inside the plane. And so then I said, thank you so much for doing this. And I said, where are you? I'm going for a training to Paris, and that is why I'm there. Okay, so she was also on the plane. We ended up, and then I did not see her. I ended up in Paris. I come to Paris. The whole place is filled with people. And they told me in Mumbai itself, you would never get accommodation. You will have to stay at the airport till this is over. You will not get food, nothing of that sort. You have to fend for yourself. My heart is beating that I told 17th. How am I going to go? And then waiting. And there is a flight that would be announced suddenly. Everybody would run. And there are so many people in the waiting list. So I'm standing in the line, and I am way behind to get at least a confirmation on some flight to connect. There's nothing there. And they said that there is no waiting list either. They're done. And this is what the providence of God. When you are going in God's will, God will guide you. And that is why I'm trying to assure you, you be in the center of His will. I'm standing in line way behind, and I suddenly see this same air hostess going this way. I said that, you know what, I desperately need to go to the US. I have no way, and they're not even taking anybody on the waiting list. Is there any way that at least you can put me, somehow squeeze me into the waiting list? And this lady, probably, whatever happened, she said, let me see what I can do. And this lady went behind the counter somehow, put me on the waiting list. And it was, I still remember, I think it was 370 or something on the waiting list. Something like that. So now it's the waiting period. So every flight has 200 some passengers that can come on a flight. So even if it is the first flight, you cannot come. Second flight, maybe. But again, you don't know. I'm sitting at the airport, and I literally am crying. And the other thing that is bothering me is, തിരിച്ചു വരുമ്പോൾ എൻ്റെ അപ്പം പറയുന്നത് എന്തുവാണെന്നറിയോ? അനുസരണക്കെട്ടവൻ, ഞാൻ പറയാതെ നീ പോയി, അനുഭവിച്ചു. And probably he is sitting at home and saying this again and again to mom. I don't know whether it was happening, but I'm just assuming he would have said that. So there is two things. One is my daughter, one is my dad. So I'm just saying, Lord, somehow make this to happen. Crying and crying. So suddenly you get a call and on the intercom and said that one flight is departing, and this is now the 16th. So now I think slowly they were trying to open. And so that one flight is going. And suddenly everybody and their mother is rushing to the counter because they want to get in. And then a few minutes later they said, oh, the flight is cancelled. They have not opened. Okay, they all rushed back. This is happening a couple of times, 2-3 times it happened. And then evening come on the 16th. 16th evening comes, and suddenly they said there is a flight that is open. The airspace is open. You can fly now. So, but you will only take according to the booked people first, and then the waitlisted, and then so booked people that is only already 200, and then the waitlisted means the other first 200, and then so it's the third flight or the fourth flight. Somehow I sat there very disappointed. I said, if this doesn't go, this reaches on 17th, then the next flight is next day. So now 17 is over. Now it is going to be 18. So now everything is gone, and now Dad has, this thing on me. Sit out there. The flight. They boarded the people. They boarded the people. Gate is closed. I'm disappointed now, sitting out there, mopping and crying, and tears come very easily for me. And sitting out there, sitting on the bag, because there is no place to sit, sitting on the bag, crying. The flight is about to depart, probably 10 minutes to depart. Suddenly you hear on the intercom, Baiju Thevatheril, come to the counter. Tell me if it is not favor of God. It increased my faith life that day. That day I learned faith life. And this is the story I wanted to bring to encourage all of you. If you are going through a situation that is, no one would understand it, but you are going through and there is no way out, commit your ways unto the Lord, and He will ordain your steps. 9/11 changed my life. Guess who was the last person on that flight? Right here. Guess when did I ended up coming? On the same time that I was supposed to end up in O'Hare Airport. Guess who came to pick me up? My dad. I know. He came in, and not only that he talked, he gave me a big hug. My dad was a crier too, only in desperate situations. And he cried his heart out when he gave me that hug. And I came back and celebrated Sarah's birthday. So Sarah's birthday is this Saturday. She is turning 28, old lady. But God's favor, we learned faith life these ways. There are many more stories that I wanted, but this story I wanted to make is tied with the statement. The title of my message is Making Godly Commitments. Sorry for the delay today that we are going to have, but I will end it at 12:30 today. Please bear with me. Joshua 24:15. And we all know this, and I think I quoted this a couple of weeks ago, right, Ansu? You told me, right? A few weeks ago I quoted this. And it says like this, and if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. In 1519, a Spanish explorer, Cortez, landed at Veracruz to begin his conquest of Mexico with only 700 men. Legend has it that before they set off to Mexico's interior, Cortez ordered the ships to be burned while his men watched their only means of retreat sink to the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. Now there was only one direction they could take, which was going forward. There was no other way to retreat. Making godly commitments is such a thing. There it says that when you put your hands to the plow, കലപ്പയ്ക്ക് കൈ വച്ചേച്ച് തിരിച്ചു പോകുന്നവൻ എന്തുവാ? So again, these things. So in 2001, and then in those times, we made a commitment to serve the Lord, and after in the future years, Binu said this to me and said that you go forward with the mission. This was later on in 2005. She said that you go forward, so because we both were committed to missions, and at that time, so I was the one that was making money in the beginning, and then she got a better job. She became a veterinarian, and so she one day came in and said that because the Lord has said, "You go, I'll take care of the things at home." Making commitments is not easy. And there were times where we were desperate. Even Binu said that, "Baija, namukku joli vella nokkandayo," because times were tough. But I always said to her this, we made the commitment, remember, God will provide. There were desperate times. And I was just telling Paula the other day, Sarah is getting married next year, God willing. And we were on the way here and we were saying this. It is not I who earned the money for Paula, Sarah to get married. She earned the money. She worked overtime some for the last few years to get that money in. But the thing is this, every single penny that we have is God's provision. When you make godly commitments, and so I told her, I've told everybody that comes in, and people have said that, oh, adinte kuda joli, Paulos joli idille. Everybody comes up with this. Paulos joli idallo. Ningal endina? Ningalude poi joli cheythu. And even the people that have where I've applied for, or people have asked me to come to job, and they said, ഭാര്യയ്ക്ക് ജോലിയുണ്ട്, അത് നല്ല കാര്യം. അപ്പം നിങ്ങളുടെ ജോലി ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ കാര്യങ്ങളെല്ലാം നോക്കും, because they didn't want to give money for the pastor. But that time again, I was reminded, you go forward with the commitments that is. This story is, when you move forward, you cut off everything, because then only you will trust in God. You will trust in God. My parents have many times tried to, and they have helped me too in certain times. They've already said, I will provide. And if everybody asks, what does your brother do? He's one of the top lawyers in Chicago. He makes hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I've tried never to spread my hands in front of others, because when you make a commitment to the Lord, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And serving the Lord in our house is to go full time for Him. That means He will provide. And so, these days, even marriages, people don't want to be committed, right? The average marriage here in the U.S., they say, even now it has come to Christians and Pentecostals too, it's 7 to 8 years. So when I say that this is going to be, next year is going to be 30 years since we got married, and when people ask, is it 30 years? Really? Some people ask me, 30 years. Even Christians, Caucasian people have asked me, 30 years? And I said, my wife survived. I don't know. How did she survive me? I don't know. 30 years. But that is a commitment. It's a very hard thing to live with me, and you guys all know it. But we survived. Why? Because when we make the commitment, when you make the commitment to God, that is what it is. Long-term commitments are something that God wants. In commitment not only to each other, but to God first. When we make that step, and said, as Rahul was saying yesterday, right? You make this commitment, but there are situations that will come to pull you back. At that time, how can we boldly say, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord? When things are not going right, what would we do? So, what does commitment look like? Right? What does commitment look like? So, I want to bring 3 major commitments and 3 hindrances this morning as to what we need to commit ourselves to. Number 1, our commitment to God entails our will. See, mind over matter, we say, right? If we put our will in His hands. See, when Jesus was going on the cross in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 26, verse 39, what does it say? Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. It is easy for us to read, but it is the hardest thing to do. കർത്താവേ, നിന്റെ ഹിതം നിവർത്തിക്കണമെന്ന് നമ്മൾ പറയുമ്പോൾ, ഈസ് ഇറ്റ് ഈസി? പലപ്പോഴും നമ്മൾ നിൻ്റെ ഹിതം എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ എൻ്റെ ഹിതത്തിനൊത്ത് നിൻ്റെ ഹിതം നിവർത്തിക്കണമെന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. Jesus understood the cost of commitment, his life. But still, he kept true to his course and commitment. He knew he was sent into this world so that he can die for each and every one of us. He was sent with that mandate. He could have swayed himself away. He could have said that, you know what, Father, I am your son. Let me have my way. Young people, when our parents and God himself comes in to tell us, this is my will, what do we do many a times? We say what? Lord, but that is too hard for me. Too hard for me. This is the reason why many people who have been saved, they don't want to make that commitment into water baptism and acknowledging God into the public, because they are saying that it is too hard to get off from me. And then you make the excuse, I'm not ready yet. Are you committing your will in the hands of God? Our will is the process by which we make decisions. Our will is what Jesus showed us by sacrifice, is how to give over the decision process from what he wanted and place our life squarely into the Father's hands. Jesus showed us that. He says, it is for let your will, not as I will, but as you will happen in my life. As believers in Jesus Christ, therefore his followers, we need to understand the cost of this commitment. Right? When we surrender our will, Jesus says what? In Luke 9:23, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily and follow me. എന്ത് ഈസിയാണെന്നറിയോ പറയാൻ? It's so easy to say. നമ്മളെ തന്നെ ത്യജിച്ച് കുരിശെടുത്ത് അവനെ പിൻഗമിക്കാൻ. Bearing the cross, what Jesus did was the heinous thing that happened in those times. You were nailed to the cross. Your legs were nailed to the cross. Your hands were nailed to the cross. He was made to put a crown of thorns on his head. Blood was oozing out of him. But he still said what? Not my will, but your will be done. If we are asked to get out of our comfort zone, our will takes over and say that, Lord, no, I don't want to do. So understand, godly commitment entails our will. Number 2, entails our finances. You know, I have not talked about this, because one of the things in discipleship, I have to talk about finances, but I'm going to touch just barely on this today. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 9 and 10, it says, honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase, so your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. God's people were commanded to give God their first fruits, which not only meant the first of what they made, but also the best. Because Jesus Christ was called what? The first fruits from the dead. 1 Corinthians 20. See, while this centers on our finances, it also involves every area of our lives, including our time and energy and possessions. Dear brothers and sisters, I know this is a giving church. But if you are not giving, then you have to come back to the basics with your commitment unto him. Dear brothers and sisters, are we committed totally to him? If we are committed totally to him, then understand our finances belong to him. To the abundance of him. See, I think last week or a few weeks ago I said that, right? When that first $1,000 comes with us, 100 is easy to give. Then 10,000 comes in us, 1,000 is easy to give. But when that 100,000 comes to give that 10,000, is the hardest thing to give. Then we try to say, oh, that gross in the net in the after all our expenses or before all our expenses. കാശ് കൂടുമ്പോഴേ ഉള്ളൂ, കാശില്ലാത്തവൻ എപ്പോഴും കൊടുക്കും. ദാറ്റ്സ് വാട്ട് ഐ തിങ്ക്. പക്ഷേ എൻ്റെ വേറൊരു കാര്യം കൂടെ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞേക്കാം. പ്ലീസ് ഡോണ്ട് ഗിവ് ഔട്ട് ഓഫ് കമ്പൽഷൻ. കുഞ്ഞുങ്ങളെ പട്ടിണി ഇട്ടേച്ച് ആരും കൊടുക്കരുത്. ബട്ട് ഓൺ ദി അതർ സൈഡ് ഓഫ് ഇറ്റ്, നിനക്ക് ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ കൊടുക്കണം. കൊടുത്തു കഴിഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അമർത്തി കുലുക്കി ദൈവം തരും. God loves a cheerful giver. But you need to understand, I can say how spiritual you are by looking at your checkbook. Again, I'm not going to dwell on there. കാരണം എല്ലാവരും പറയും പാസ്റ്റർമാർ കാശിനെ പറ്റി പറയുന്നത്. എനിക്ക് വേണ്ടിയല്ല ഞാൻ പറയുന്നത്, നിങ്ങളുടെ അനുഗ്രഹത്തിന് വേണ്ടിയാണ് പറയുന്നത്. You're going to give me whatever you have told me that you will give. That's okay. I am happy with that. I gracefully accepted it. So don't worry about me. But give unto God what it's due unto God. That's God's. Number 3, it entails our agendas. If we, in Proverbs 3 verse 5 and 6, it says what? Trust in the, it should be memorized by all kids. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him and He shall direct your path. What is the acknowledgement? It is basically saying that, Lord, not my agenda, but your agenda be fulfilled. നമ്മളതെങ്കിൽ ഇങ്ങനെ നിരത്തി വെക്കും ഒരു അജണ്ട. എന്നിട്ട് പറയും, കർത്താവേ, ഈ അജണ്ട പ്രകാരം നിന്റെ ഹിതം നിവർത്തിക്കണേ. But we need to give our agendas to God. When we give this to God, God is going to honor you, because that is a commitment that you give. We are told to acknowledge God in all our ways. To acknowledge in the Hebrew language doesn't mean to agree to His presence. Rather, it means to get to know God in an intimate way, much like a husband or wife is to know their spouse. Giving our agenda means, just like, for some years, again, this story will come later. For some years, it was my agenda always. One night, Binu told, what, you got to sit and listen. And this we will talk about if we ever have a family seminar. And then, so now, I even think, before I think, she knows what I'm thinking. Because our agendas have now merged together, and so that agenda is complete. The thing that we need to understand is, if we say that His agenda is our agenda, that means our agendas need to merge. Our agendas need to merge. Trusting God along with taking the time to personally know Him and to understand His heart is what it is. So what are the barriers? And I will not go into detail, but I will. Sometimes past experiences. We are often made to make commitments because we've been hurt in the past. These are barriers to making commitments. Sometimes people have burned us. Sometimes circumstances have burned us. Sometimes people around us have burned us. But understand this, He is still constant. He is still constant. He is there right beside us. Number 2, selfishness takes us not to make commitments, because it is very hard to get rid of us. ചിലപ്പോൾ ഒരാൾക്ക് ഇന്ന് രാവിലെ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞതുപോലെ, ഒരാൾക്ക് നന്മ വരുമ്പോൾ ആ നന്മയെ പ്രസൻറ്റ് ചെയ്യാനല്ല, പക്ഷേ അതിനകത്തിൽ പറയണം ഞാൻ നിന്നെക്കാട്ടിലും ബെറ്ററാന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, അത് സെൽഫിഷ്നെസ്സാണ്. റൈറ്റ്? My horse is bigger than your horse. That's selfishness. But that makes us not to commit ourselves. Same thing is complacency. Complacency means that you are, okay with the status quo, and you don't want to make that commitment one more time. Jesus says we cannot serve two masters. We cannot serve our possessions and God at the same time. We need to understand that I talked about Motorola earlier, right? What defeated Motorola was their complacency. Motorola was, we were making hundreds of millions of dollars by selling handset and the system behind it. It was an analog system. It was not a digital system. So earlier, this is in 2001. In 2000, in 1998, 99, the digital system came into play. And when the digital system came, remember this, that Motorola was part of that digital concept too. But they said that it will take few more years to get that. They were complacent because they were making money. So what do? They said that we will wait on the digital concept. We will still continue on the analog concept. What ended up happening is Nokia came and took over. That destroyed Motorola. Today, Motorola is no more. Dear brothers and sisters, when we become casual Christians without a commitment, we are worse than carnal people. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot put your foot in two boats at the same time. This morning, no matter what your past experience, what your selfishness is, no matter where you are, don't be complacent, but understand, surrender your will unto Him. Surrender your agendas unto Him. Surrender your finances unto Him. We sang that song. No matter what may come our way, Samudrangal, and when the oceans rise and thunders roar, I will soar with you above the storm. Because Father, you are King over the floods. I will be still and know that you are God. Can we stand in the presence of God? I stopped at